We'll just figure it out. It'll be okay. Okay,
Okay.
so this is the new episode. And so Sasha,
Mhm.
remember how I said I had that idea about how we would write 2 letters and we write one
Yes.
letter to a thing that we were letting go and another second letter to a thing that we were where we were like, no, I'm actually not going to let you go.
Yes.
I thought that was a good idea, and I still think it's a good idea.
Me
But
too.
then, thank you. But then the more that I was thinking about it, the more I realized that the thing I'm actually more interested in is the not letting go. Like in our first episode,
Mm.
we talked about what it feels like to, to
Uh-huh.
accept loss. And
Mm.
you talked a little bit about how it felt for you, about how for you to be able to accept, to not lose Luca, like to
Mhm.
reject the idea of losing, to
Mhm.
be like, no, I decline losing you. I
Yeah.
insist upon having you. You
Mhm.
had to be willing to accept the loss of many um ideas of that relationship, or
Mhm.
like, you know, um and so I think that's the thing that feels really interesting to me. I like wanted to talk more about relationships where ultimately we are saying, no, I don't choose to lose you. Like I'm not going to lose you.
Mm.
And then what that means for what that means, like how,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
what you have to let go of in order to ultimately say, no, I'm not letting go. Like I'm
Mhm.
gonna not let go. Like what does it look like to decide you're gonna not let go? How does loss look? What does it look like to accept loss in that scenario?
Yeah. I
And
can
yeah.
I can definitely speak to that personally, and I think that that's an compelling angle to look at
Okay.
it. Mhm.
So maybe we could just, I thought maybe we could just each have um like I have a particular relationship in mind that I thought that I'd be in which I thought in which I'd be interested in looking at how that works.
Mhm.
And if you have a particular relationship or experience in mind,
Mhm.
I thought maybe we could just sort of share them and then
Sure.
talk about it. How's
Yeah.
that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay. Let's do that then. Let's do it like that. It's a little bit
Okay.
less constructed. It's a little bit more just chatting.
Sure. Well, it sounds better for me since I didn't do my homework. Um,
Me either.
Yay. Um, but it still speaks to the idea, which I
Mhm.
like. And side note, I really like actually writing letters. I think
I
if
do
I
too.
hadn't been busy this week, writing letters, some I don't ever send, some I
Mhm.
write 3 different ways and then send one. I
Mhm.
just think it's helpful.
I do
So
too.
I am pro letter writing for lots of purposes.
Yeah. And maybe we
Um,
can keep that as like a side activity and we can each
yeah,
write the letters that we didn't, that we didn't write and post them somewhere or just show them to each
yeah,
other the next time we visit or something.
yeah, absolutely. Um, okay. Do you want to start or shall I?
I think if you feel up for starting, do you feel up for starting?
I feel up for starting. I my hmm. There are lots of things I could discuss, but I'm gonna pick one relationship just to be specific. Um, and it's really relevant, really salient for me now. Um, so oh, when I was pregnant with my now 12-year-old, I met this woman who would go on to become one of my dearest friends. She became like a sister to me. It's like, there isn't enough attention given, not commensurate to how important they are to just friendships.
Mhm.
Like, like
Mhm.
like, oh, romance. And I'm like, all right, how about a friendship? Like a really powerful friendship. Like
Mhm.
that's a lot.
Mhm.
um, so I met this woman when I was pregnant with Rilo, and she and I became really close, really comfortable, really fast. We had some similar trauma and drama in our background, and found ourselves in a similar moment in life in a similar place in Atlanta. And I just adored her. I still do. And gosh, 3 years after we met,
Mhm.
we because of my husband's work, we moved. And I remember telling her that we were moving, and she just, her eyes kind of filled with tears, and she just kind of walked away. And that was exactly how I felt too. Like I was so heartbroken. And I remember thinking, I am not accepting the end of this. This is not the end.
Mhm.
And then we very intentionally were like, we're going to figure out what this looks like from afar.
Mhm.
And it looks like traveling all over together. It looks like a weekend every year, going away, just the two of us, aside from the last couple COVID years. It looks like visiting each other's homes.
Mhm.
It looks like holidays together. Like that's what it looks like. And you know what? We've been away 9 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like we're just as close, if not closer.
Yeah.
And I am, I decided about 1 month ago, that I'm ready to move back to Atlanta.
Mhm.
And I just never let that go. Like I was like, I'm never not letting this go. And now the
Mhm.
idea that we could live in the same place and see
Yeah.
each other,
Yeah.
and there's other things pulling us there for sure. But this is a
Yeah.
big, beautiful part of it. And I'm so glad I didn't ever just say, oh well,
Mhm.
that I
Right.
didn't let go and say, and that I kind of fought for it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I allowed it though to change, because it wasn't going to be the 2 times a week we go for walks.
Right.
And it had to change. It
Mhm.
had to be something very different that was much more expensive and
Mhm.
planned out. But
Mhm.
um and I feel like my tenacity and my
Yeah.
refusal to let it go,
Yeah.
I was like, no, this like means too much. This
Yeah.
one, no,
Yeah, you're gonna figure out a different shape
figure it
for
out.
it.
And I would figure it out if we weren't moving back. I mean, it would continue the way it is and
Mhm.
grow into whatever it's going to be as we become older ladies. And
Mhm.
I would love that. But, just like you and I visit each other, and I visit my other dear people in the world, like
Yeah.
they're just, I won't let it go.
Yeah. I love that.
Mhm.
Um, I wanna ask a bunch of questions
Mhm.
about what it is that makes that a thing that you can do, um, and how being able to do that affects other parts of your life, like how this particular tendency or capacity, plays out in other areas, and I don't know if it would be more interesting to maybe I'll talk about my thing, and then we can, because
Okay.
I wanna talk
Yeah.
a little bit about my father, and I feel like it's a different it's the same thing, but in a different, sort of package. So maybe it'll be interesting
Yeah. And
to
contrast. Yeah.
compare and contrast.
Yeah. Let's hear yours. Yeah. And then we'll talk
Okay.
about it all. Yes.
So I've been thinking about my father because with my father, like it seems like uh with your friendship, and I'm forgetting her name right now.
Well, I hadn't mentioned it yet.
Elizabeth.
It's Robin.
That's it. I know her
Mhm.
name, but I wasn't
Yeah.
remembering it. And then I was like, Rilo, that's not her name. Rilo, that's not her name. Rilo,
That
that's
would
not
be
her name.
really
Rilo, that's not her name. My
that would
brain
be
just
really
kept offering it to
interesting
me. I was like,
if
what's her friend's name? Rilo. No, that's not her name. That's
that would be
Rilo's
actually
name.
really creepy if you like met someone when you were pregnant and they had a really unique name and you're like, "Ooh, I really like you." And then you name your
I'm not letting
daughter,
go of this
I
relationship.
am not letting go. Yeah, meanwhile, companion podcast, This Woman Won't Leave Me Alone by Robin. I love it.
Well, her name is Robin, not Rilo,
Yeah, no.
which is better.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Um, so it feels like with Robin, you guys together said yes to each other many times, right? Like, so
Mhm.
your circumstances were saying no. There was things about your circumstances that were like, I'm gonna ask you to say no, and you were like, no, I'm gonna choose to say yes.
Mhm.
Um, and I think a thing with my father is that I feel like he and I have said no to each other
Mm.
a lot of times. Like my mother got pregnant, um, and she was like, "Would you I am pregnant." And he at that point he could have gotten on a plane and come back to California, and he didn't. So that was sort of like a no. Um,
Mm.
and and then I mean, lots of different people said no, and then my mother could have stayed in California and eventually he would have come back. He did go back to California,
Mhm.
but she didn't. She left. So there is another no. And um when he came to visit me when I was 7, he like literally came into my bedroom and asked me if he could stay. And I said no, I said no.
Wow.
Um and he left. So that was a no.
Mm.
That was, like,
Very explicit.
very explicit, quite
Can I stay?
literally.
No.
No, no.
No, we're not doing that. You can go now.
I accept your loss.
That's right.
Um,
I'm already halfway through digesting it, so just go
just
on
go on.
a
Go on,
yeah.
get. Although I will say, and then, he called my mother and me and all through middle school, and I said no every time he called.
Mm.
Um,
That's commitment.
and I
Like
was committed.
I'm like,
Well, and it's interesting because on one level, I was very committed to saying no to him. I am not sure I was committed to losing him. I
mm,
feel like I had constructed a scenario where my saying no on
mm,
some level was a part of attaching him to me. Like
mm,
it was like the like resistance, like him pulling away. And like there was something about that was, which I think is interesting and I'd like to
yeah.
think about more. Um, and
Yeah,
then
I'd like to come
finally,
back to that as well after
yeah,
you're done.
because it
Yeah.
feels like something. Like it feels like although
Mhm.
I said no to him and he said no to me in a variety of ways, we also there was a way in which that deepened the tangle or like mm, tightened the ropes. Um, and then I told my mother I didn't want him to have our information when I moved to high school, and she didn't give it to him, and she told him I didn't want
Excuse me.
to talk to him anymore, and
Mm,
he stopped calling. He couldn't call.
mm,
And he moved to Mexico, so she didn't have his contact information anymore. So that was a no, there was
yeah.
another no. Um, but like I never said, there was also a way in which inside of my heart and my brain, I clearly had never said no. I was sort of always visiting. I was just not ready. I was always visiting and revisiting the idea of
Mm,
him. Um, and I almost always was ultimately saying no in my visits, my imagination visits. I was like, the idea of my father, no, like, but in different ways and over. Um, and then when I was 30, I revisited it in my imagination and said yes, and got in touch with his family in California and um, visited them and talked to him on the telephone. And um, and then learned more about who he actually is. And I think that there's been this kind of like I've met him twice. That one time when I was 7 and he asked me if he could stay and I said no and he left. And then the second time a month ago, 2 months ago. And he's not around, like he's cognitively not present in the same way that he was when I was 7. And but I so he can't so I don't know if the offer is still on the table in the same way,
Yeah.
you know? Uh,
Right.
but the answer is definitely yes for me. The
Mm.
answer for me is like, yeah, this time. And I think I still get to I think it's not too late to say that. Like, I mean, I definitely get to say it to my sister and to his family, but I think I get to say it to him. I'm not sure that that's true, but I think that that's true. I think I get to say it even if he's not there to
Yeah.
accept it, or I mean, and
Oh,
he's not
yeah.
not there to accept it, but I think I would
Yes.
get to say it even if he wasn't there to accept it. I'm not sure. I'd like to mull that over with you.
Mm, that's good. Um, uh, you know, I had several things come up. I'm going to start with this last point you made, and then we'll go back. You know, as you said, even if he's not there to receive it or accept it, like you still feel like you can say yes.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's, I know I felt that way with my mother,
Mm,
who was uh, more and more absent emotionally and cognitively and then actually over the years. And we were estranged for 8 years. We talked on the phone maybe 3 years before she died, but and I was learning how to say yes, but with boundaries, because yes before was like a consumption proposal where
mm,
I was
mhm,
like, okay, then no.
mhm,
Thank you. But I learned as I got older how to be like, oh, I can say yes to pieces, or I can
mhm,
say yes to this line, and I can say, and you might not have any interest in it
mm,
or be able to partake, but I am here. And it felt like a meditative kind of thing of like,
mm,
I am open to this. I am saying yes to this.
mm,
It almost felt like energetic. Like I
mm,
am sending this energy of openness and love to you.
mm,
Um, I have no idea if you can receive it, but it felt different.
mhm,
That's why I was like, yes, you can do that. Like I felt different. Like when she died, I felt like we had healed because
mm.
I had said yes. Does that make
That's
sense?
interesting.
Even though,
She hadn't said necessarily yes
yeah, we hadn't
back
really, but I
or
felt like we had come through something and we had had a couple of conversations
yeah,
that were pretty good
yeah.
during one of her sober times. But I think that's what's interesting is like the sightedness. Like I think, and that's what I was thinking about with regard to my relationship with Robin is it feels we both
Mhm,
I felt like we were on a super even playing field. Like we
mhm,
were there was no like past grievances that we were having to repair and work through. Um and so it was more a matter of I'm willing to fight for this. How about
mhm,
you? It's like, yeah, let's fight for
mhm,
it. Whereas
mhm,
I feel like with a parent, especially when you have been hurt and you
mhm,
feel like bristly, and I had that with my dad too, like I'd be like, um, I'm gonna say no to you for 5 years and we're gonna see where this, you know what I mean? Like I feel
yeah.
I know I did a lot of like that's one thing I wrote down while you were talking. Do you feel like there was some element of seeing how much he would fight for it, or did you really not want him? You said something about like
That's a little
you were saying no, but you really didn't want to, like I couldn't tell if you were saying not now or not like this or not yet,
yeah.
or if you were saying no, no
Um,
forever.
I I wonder about I don't if there's a way to say no that is I feel like there was a part of my relationship with my father where I was saying no, and that was like the thing I was using for engagement. Like I was like, I want you to say yes to this
Right.
no. And I want this to be the thing that hooks us together. And it actually felt like an
Mhm. Like the
incredibly
entangle, you
powerful hook.
said, like it made it kind of like
Yeah.
we're wrestling with
Like,
this like
oh,
tension
we
of
are
like I'm saying
hooked
no,
together.
you want this, and I'm saying no.
Yeah. And like,
Right.
I am in pain. Like, my
Mm,
saying no hurts me, and I think it hurts you. Um, and that, like, I won't be able to forget about you because of the way that I'm saying
mm,
no to you. You know, like, in some
mhm,
ways,
mhm.
if I had said yes or sure or I'm not sure, that would have been less binding. Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
felt like it did it in retrospect. At the time, I absolutely would not have described it this way. But in retrospect, it feels like I was in some way, um, like the feelings I had were pretty powerful, and I was
Mm,
looking for some way to engage with them powerfully that didn't that wasn't like love. That wasn't love in the way that we imagine love. That wasn't
mhm.
like I don't know exactly. I can't 100% put my finger on it.
Ah, ah, yeah, so it's resonating for me in my own experience, so I might be applying that to it, but it feels a little bit like you needed something powerful. You couldn't just have a small talk like, "Oh, hey," or like you needed something equally powerful. It just wasn't gonna
Mhm.
be friendly. Like it couldn't
Mhm.
be. You didn't have the foundation for that. You didn't have
Mhm.
that. So it needed to be, it's kind of like
Mhm.
you couldn't, you could at least match the size of the
Mhm.
feeling.
Mhm.
If you know what I mean? Like, okay, how about anger? Like that I'll give you.
Mhm.
Like anger, because I can just conjure up the size that I need to apply to this, even if it doesn't really show all the complicated feelings. And also, when you're a
Mhm.
kid,
Yeah.
like processing
Yeah.
this stuff, and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
It was too big for
too
my
big.
brain and my body, and it felt like, yeah, I think that's like what you're saying, like, I can match the size. That
Mm,
feels right. It feels like I can't get out of this. I am inside it,
mm,
and I can at least match the size. Like, I have to pull with an equal force, which
yeah.
feels really different than
Mhm,
because, like, my best friend Emmy lives in Massachusetts, and we've been far apart since I moved here in 2007, and
mm,
we've maintained a relationship, and so I have a little bit of that your relationship with
mhm.
Robin, like, practice at being like, "Okay,
Away,
I'm gonna
but
find
present.
time, I'm
Right.
gonna" like, sometimes you're gonna be more able to do a thing, and I'm gonna be less able to do a thing, and, we're gonna keep coming back and keep coming back, and that feels they don't feel like it feels like practicing that helps me understand this more, or maybe having this helps me be better at practice it. Like, they
Mm,
definitely feel like they're in communication, the two
yeah.
ways of being like, I'm not gonna lose you. I'm not gonna lose you. Or you're not lost. Like, maybe more it's just acknowledgement. It's like you are in me.
Yeah.
And right? Like,
And,
I'm
I'm
not gonna
thinking
pretend
back,
like it's not true.
right, and thinking back to a prior episode we did about our mothers and fathers
Mhm.
and loss, I think. I think it was around that theme, but whether it's the absence of or the presence of, he's there.
Mhm. Mhm.
He's a part of your life.
Mhm.
And I think as you've gotten older, it seems like you've come to terms with like, oh, like it's the shape is not just an angry ball that I can hurl,
Mhm.
it's like there's,
Mhm.
sadness and hope and loss and grief and
Mhm.
just it's much more nuanced and complicated and many layered, I'm sure. I know um and it's like sitting with it and being like, "Yep,
Mhm.
here's this."
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like I have like, my father is definitely the most primary spot where I have that experience, or, like, primary isn't quite right, but, like, it feels like if it's a circle, like, he's the middle of the circle,
Mm,
or if it's like an orb, he's in the middle of that orb, but
yeah.
I have other relationships for whatever reason, I feel like it's a feature of my love that I
Mm,
don't it doesn't it doesn't vanish easily.
right.
Um, and I think that this notion that or not notion, maybe it's an experience. I think that it observation would suggest that it is not true for all people, that for
Mm,
some people it is possible to let people drop out of them, or people do drop out of them.
mm,
And I've been thinking about it because of this, like, accepting, like, what does it mean to
mhm.
accept that something is lost, and
Yeah.
wondering, is it that I'm not willing to accept, like, should I have accepted that my father was lost to me? Like, what how
Mm,
would it have been different if I had accepted that? Or
right.
is this what accepting, but then what if, and I think more and more for me, the answer is no. Like, what I'm doing is accepting what it looks like, what people look like in me, even when they're not present.
Yeah.
And in some cases, like with Emmy, I'm like, I accept that you are in me,
Mhm,
and I'm glad about it, and you're glad about it. And we're gonna work together to, even though it's hard that we don't get to do it in this, like, traditional way, this, like, traditional best friend way. I It's like, okay, we can come up with, or
yeah,
like,
totally.
right?
It's
Like, and it's kind of even fun, like,
I
I would
think
like
once
for
you
you to
yeah,
live near me and for us to be able to do
yeah.
and that's not what's happening. And so we're doing this other thing, and it's sort of exciting and fun to think of all the ways we can connect,
Mhm.
because you want to, and I want to, and, like, I like how that feels.
Yeah, and that's what strikes me as really different from my example and yours is, in my example and in your relationship with Emmy, you have both parties saying yes,
Yeah.
and saying yes and how.
Yeah.
Like, yes, and
How do we do
what will
it?
this
Let's
look
do it.
like? Like, let's play, let's try, let's
Yeah.
see what this is like.
Mhm.
Maybe
And
we travel for Thanksgiving and see what
mhm.
that's like,
Yeah.
or maybe you guys send your voice recordings,
Yeah.
and it's like you listen
Talking to
to
each
each
other
other
in
when you
some way.
can,
Yeah.
even with the time zone
Mhm.
problem and busy lives.
Yeah.
And I but and it's hard to jump into a relationship like I think of your dad and relationships like that I've had where it's like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Like now I'm like, okay, I'm kind of open. And now it's like, do I send you, do I like send you a voice recording?
Yeah.
Do I send you a picture of me today? Like, how do we like start this back and forth? Maybe there's not. Maybe for
Maybe there's not, and maybe
some,
there's never.
this,
For some,
yeah.
maybe there's never. It's just, like, acknowledgement that this openness does exist inside me.
And it's kind of energetic and like it's mainly occupied by energy and feeling rather than
Mhm.
interactions
Mhm.
and like communicating. And what do you think?
Yeah. I think that there's it's not like, because with Robin, or with, like, you and me, or me and Emmy, it's like there's pain, it's like, "Oh, no."
Hmm.
With you and Robin, like, "Oh, you're moving to Chicago, like, my heart is broken, and
Hmm.
I'm staying,"
Yeah,
like,
right.
um and but so there's pain, and then there's the, like, right in the same room with the pain, there's the joy of together,
Yeah.
it's like, um
Mm.
but, like, with your mother or my father, or that category that category of
That
relationship,
category.
I don't know what
Those
that
people.
means. It's
Complicated, distant, troubling category. Yes.
there's this kind of, like, mhm, right, like, for me, it feels like, I guess there's accepting loss, the specifically, where I feel like I'm declining. I'm like,
Mm,
no, it, or I'm like, no, I won't go away. I guess that's what it is. It's like I can accept that
mm,
he might be lost to me. You know what I
mhm,
mean? Like I might not be able to, he might, but I'm not gonna be lost to him.
mm,
Like I am still here and I'm
mm.
gonna leave myself open. Um,
And I think it's that right there, what you said is, I think, a huge part of this. And it's I'm going to leave myself open. It feels both exciting and
mhm,
terrifying, depending upon which of these relationships we're talking about.
mhm,
It's like, yeah, I'm leaving it open. Oh, I love it. Yeah, me too. And it's like, I'm leaving this open. And I'm just open over here. Not a raw nerve and vulnerable, but I'm open. I said no for years, but my no, was like not now and maybe, I don't know. Like that's how it feels to me when I hear you talk about it and how it was.
yeah,
I don't know.
and I think sometimes that's what the for me in like in that case and in other cases, sometimes that's what the no is. The no is like I am open and I don't like I have to put something. It's like getting a really, really, really scary looking dog
Mm,
because your house has no walls.
right.
You're like, I don't have walls. I don't know what I'm gonna do because I live in this house with no walls and I'm
Mm,
not ready to live in a house with no walls. And so I will get the loudest dog. I will get the loudest dog, but it's because I don't have walls and I don't seem to be building any. I keep like thinking about building them and trying to build them and then I don't. And and my dog
somehow.
is like getting tired now. Like now in my
Like,
40s, my
oh,
dog is like, "Oh my God. This is
right.
I'm not even upset." I just
No, no.
like if you were really gonna build like if you really don't want people to come in, you need to build the fucking walls. I'm laying down.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I kind of feel
tired. I
like
can't. Yeah, I get it. I get that dog, and I've had that in me too. So
yeah,
much like, ugh.
yeah.
And I'm just,
Finally, it's like you don't even mean it. There you are. Like, and so that's a different thing, learning to be like, "Oh, right. You're right. If I was gonna build a wall, I would have built a wall, and I didn't. And I don't
uh-huh.
think I am. I'm not."
I for me, my parallel with you and your dad, it reminds me more of probably me and my dad. And you know what I've realized I'm sad about with that is I'm sad for both of us. Like I'm sad.
Mm,
I'm just sad for us.
mhm,
I'm like, this could have been this could have been
mhm.
cool.
Yeah,
This could have been really nice.
yeah,
And then acknowledging that it is hard,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
And but it doesn't mean it's not um, you know, worth doing or worth being open to as it is. It's just being present and open to what is
yeah.
reminds me also, it's kind of like the other loss episode we did
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
things that I
That's it.
expected
That's
or
it.
hoped, which
That's
was like
it.
something much more
That's it.
mm, a
That's
bigger
it.
tangle, like a lovely tangle.
Mhm.
But instead, I have a hard tangle that's kind of like
Yeah,
dying on the vine a little bit.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, right?
yeah. Is that when you're like, "Oh, I'm I my heart is open and it's open to you." And like that means that I have to right? There's so many it's like, "Oh, we're not gonna be that."
Yeah,
It's like a different anger is
yeah.
so nice because you never have to look at the things. It's
No,
so distracting. Like who can look around when the dog's barking? But
yeah.
when it stops barking and you have to look and be like, "Oh, okay."
And yeah, I know.
I don't know if we're gonna ever be anything. Maybe. I'm up for it, and
Yeah.
but maybe not. And we're not gonna be that.
And that is hard to acknowledge that and then say, and I'm here and I'm open. and we'll
Yeah.
see. It's such a vulnerable, curious openness,
Yeah,
and
it
it's
is.
a hard, like, position to hold,
Yeah.
and yet I feel like so much good can come of it, even if
Mhm.
it's just realizing you can weather that.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's nice to again, and this I've said, so many, so many, so many, so many times. It's so much easier and nicer to do it with when there's, like, you doing
Mm.
it, and I can
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
like, "I'm like this, Sasha," and you can be like, "Oh, yes."
Yeah.
You know, because then it's not because it's like when I'm like, I have no like, this whole part of my like, there's so many parts of my house that are just like,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever gonna they're just gonna be like that, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, me too, my house too."
Yeah.
Like,
Right, at a
things just
certain point, you're like,
walk
"This is just how I am.
yeah.
Like, this is how it is." Which is
Like,
both
what the
freeing and horrifying. You're like, "Oh,
and
ugh,
and
okay."
if you look or for me, if I look around and everyone else is like, "Oh, no, all my rooms have walls." Like, "What are you
Yeah,
talking about?" Yes, they have
right.
walls. Your rooms don't have walls? Go what? Like, do you need the number
Oh,
for a contractor? Because
right.
I could help you out like that. But, like, I think it's a bad idea. What are you gonna do? Like,
Mhm.
winter will come again. Um, then
Yeah.
I just feel panicked and, I still don't build walls, but I just
But
feel
you're panicked with your tired dog and no walls. And you're like, "Oh, no."
I just try
Oh,
to, like, only have the tours go through the, like, 4 finished rooms. I'm like,
yeah.
"Nothing's back there, nothing. Nothing's
No
back
need
there.
to look. That's right.
Let's all settle here on
Uh,
this sectional in this room."
that has
Well,
walls.
so
That's right.
do you wanna
Uh,
we could hang things from the various because
yeah.
and it but it so it feels way easier and better if I get to have a, like, a community of people, you
I
know, who
agree. It's
Okay,
really nice to be able
that's good.
to work through these. And I do think, to loop back to Grief House,
Mhm.
and we've had some interactions with people who listen. If you have a letter you want to
Yeah,
write, and
yeah.
if we ever do find a way to have recordings, I would
Mhm.
love we're gonna work towards that, where
Yeah,
you
let's
could
work towards
call
that.
and leave a message that we could listen to privately if you want,
Yeah,
or include it in the
yeah.
show, and talk about it, or have people on to
Mhm.
share their own stories. I think that could
Yeah.
be really
I would love that.
helpful.
I
Mhm.
would love that, and I would just like to I yeah, and in whatever ways, like, I would love to be able to like, wouldn't it be nice do you remember this is going further than we need to, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Did you ever go
Of
to
course you are.
George's Island? Isn't it called George's Island? It's, like, in the Boston Harbor, and you take a boat, and it's just like a fort that's all like, falling apart.
I mean,
I don't know. Or do you
that
remember
sounds familiar-ish, but
okay.
I just might not remembering the
Yeah.
name, but
Or do you
mhm.
remember that, psychiatric hospital that was abandoned in Belmont that you, like, walked through the community garden and then there was remember the community garden? Do you
How
remember the
come I don't
community
remember
garden?
any of this? What is
You don't remember
happening?
the community
Ah!
it was, like, near Catherine's house. This is now no longer, a thing that everyone's going to relate to, but remember it was near Catherine's
Oh,
house.
that.
So then
I
you
think
walked through
so,
the community
yeah.
garden, and then
Mhm.
there was forest, and you walked through the
Oh,
forest, and
right,
there were paths,
mhm.
and then you were at this, like, psychiatric hospital that had been abandoned in the '70s, but it was still,
Ah,
like, many, many buildings, and I
yes.
loved walking there. It was, like,
Mm.
scary and beautiful, and I just feel like I would like to see all everybody's
Psychiatric
abandoned
hospital?
psychiatric hospitals. So
Show me your abandoned
we could have like
psychiatric
a tour. You know how
hospital.
people have like cattery here in Portland, people have cattery tours. You go see the catteries that they built for their cat,
Oh,
which are like
wow. Are you serious? Oh, I
catteries?
have to tell my daughter
Catios,
that.
catios. They're
Okay, a
like patios for
cattery.
your cat.
Yes.
Catios. And people
Mhm.
go, it's like a
A
list and
tour.
you go and you pay money to go to people's houses and see their catios.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
that, but with our abandoned psychiatric
I
hospitals
mean,
of our
it's pretty
souls.
much the same thing.
So,
Of our souls.
of our souls.
Yes. So if
So
anyone would
that'll
like to
be
join us on this
logistically, there may
adventure,
be some,
please,
yeah, if you're
please
like
share.
if you're good at tours or I don't know, architecture. I'm not sure all the different people we need to get on board, but I'd like to make that happen. Let's make that happen, guys.
Let's make it happen. All
And
right, next on the
gals,
list.
folks, y'all, next on the list.
All
Okay,
right.
well, that was good.
That was good.
Yay.
All right. Yay.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Yes, thank you.
That's, I never know. That's